an original MCM production.
Good morning. I'll call the meeting of the full commission to order. Will the commission secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Bohl?
Here.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Commissioner Eli?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson is expected. Commissioner Krieger?
Here.
Commissioner Manzanet?
Here.
Commissioner Martinsek?
Here.
Commissioner Perez?
Present.
Commissioner Swan is excused. Commissioner Hermes?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of proceedings of regular commission meeting held September 25th, 2017, and accepting a motion thereof.
Acceptance.
A second?
Thank you. The motion by Commissioner Bohl, the second by Commissioner Manzanet. Is there additions or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. The minutes are so approved. Next item is new business, operations maintenance report for September 2017. Gentlemen.
Commissioners. Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Patrick Omanoff, District's Manager of Contract Compliance,
Scott Royer, Veolia's General Manager.
with the operations and maintenance report for September 2017. So in September, the district was in full compliance with our Wisconsin Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. Veolia was in full compliance with the operations and maintenance agreement. We did not have any combined or separate sewer overflows. Our percent capture year to date, not quite 100%, but about as close as you can get.
Okay, this table shows the influent and effluent parameters for the month, and all those parameters were within their normal ranges. This shows Jones Island effluent biochemical oxygen demand and total suspended solids for the last 13 months. And we're well below the contract limit. This shows South Shore effluent BOD and TSS. And again, for August and September, we're back well below the contract limit. This shows Jones Island and South Shore effluent fecal coliform. And again, we're below the permit limit as well as the contract limit. This shows Jones Island effluent total phosphorus, well below the permit limit for the last 13 months. This shows South Shore effluent total phosphorus. And again, we're well below the 6-month moving average permit limit.
Moving into the conveyance and storage system. So for the month of September, we are well below average for precipitation. I had a couple of events, nothing significant that caused us any issues. Again, back in July, we had that one SSO that was just over 1,000 gallons. Otherwise, we have not had any overflows this year. A graphical representation of the precipitation, again, where you can see for the last couple months, we've been significantly below average. And then moving into biosolids production, the green line is the amount of product requested by our marketing group. The orange line represents the production. At the end of September, we are just caught up to the total demand for production, ending the month with 2,400 tons in the silos, well below our operational maximum inventory of 10,000 tons.
And this shows the maintenance backlog for both preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance work orders. They're within their normal ranges. You can see an uptick in the PMs. Some of that is due to the fact that we do an annual shutdown of the D&D building in October, which actually started just before the beginning of the month this year. And so a lot of those PMs were taken care of during the, as well as a lot of CMs were taken care of during the shutdown. Safety performance, we haven't had a safety incident since last April. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the Operations Committee report. 4 items, and we'll let Commissioner Krieger handle that for us today.
Yes, the Operations Committee did meet and considered 4 different items, all of which were recommended for approval to the full commission. So none of them have any restrictions, and I would therefore move in block to approve items 1 through 4.
I'll second.
The motion by Commissioner Krieger, the second by Commissioner Manzanet. Further discussion upon those items in block? See none. Therefore, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. And the items are set approved. Is there further business before us this morning, Commissioner Krieger?
No, I am not aware of any other business to conduct. Thank you.
Next, we move to Policy, Finance, Personnel Committee. Commissioner Manzanet, please.
Good morning, Chair. The Policy and Finance Personnel Committee did meet, discussed 7 items. I would like to take in block items 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10 and 11. I am move for approval. So moved.
Thank you. The motion by Commissioner Manzanet, the second by, I think, Commissioner Perez?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there further discussion upon these items? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items have carried. The motion is carried.
Chair, we have item number 7, 17-100-10, levy of taxes for the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, capital purpose for the fiscal 2018 fiscal year. This requires a 2/3 affirmative vote from the full commission for adoption.
And you so move?
I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
The motion by Commissioner Manzanet, the second by Commissioner Krieger. Is there further discussion? Will the Commission Secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Bohl?
Aye.
Commissioner Devine?
Aye.
Commissioner Eli?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Krieger?
Aye.
Commissioner Manzanet?
Aye.
Commissioner Martinsek? Commissioner Perez?
Aye.
Commissioner Hermes?
Here, and aye. Thank you. Is there further business before us as Policy, Finance, and Personnel Committee?
That will conclude on my report, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Manzanet. Organization and Administration. Mr.
Good morning.
Schaefer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nothing under staff recognition today. Item C is the 2050 Facilities Plan update, and Bill Krill and Greg Hunger are going to provide that. And as we've said in the past, we're going to provide something every month on the 2050 plan, which will be approved next summer, we hope. And just so that you have background information moving into that.
Greg Hodinger, Asset Management Program Director.
Bill Krill, Project Manager for the 2050 Facility Plan, and Greg is basically serving as Deputy Project Manager as we move into the part of the plan that we really start producing documents and such.
Yep, just stay on for a second. So what we're going to walk through today on the 2050 Facilities Plan is a little bit of an overview on the format of how the plan is going to look as far as the deliverables that are going to be delivered to the DNR, and then what's going to be used by staff moving forward. We're going to talk about the schedule on how the plan is going to be presented, the final versions to the commission. Then we'll give a little bit of an overview on the methodology that's been used to develop the plan and some of the big picture goals that we're incorporating to be evaluated under the plan, and then status on where we're at with looking at some of those alternatives to meet those goals. What we've got here is just kind of showing what we're doing here is the 25th Facilities Plan is not really laying out new goals. It's taking what we've already developed. The first document on the left there is our sustainability plan, which includes our 2035 vision, laid out a lot of goals for us to achieve by 2035. So that's going to be one of the main basis of what we're developing the 2050 Facilities Plan to achieve, with an interim milestone of 2035, what we need to do between now and 2035 to meet those goals, and then what do we need to do between now and 2050 to move beyond those goals. And the other two documents, we're already working on these things, so it's really taking the programs we've implemented to date, kind of moving them from where we're at today to where we need to be by 2035 and 2050. And as far as the actual format of the documents, at the top we're going to have a 2050 Facilities Plan that's going to be a summary of the documents that are below. So the 2050 Facilities Plan that'll be provided and approved by the DNR is going to be really a summary document, so it's not going to be a voluminous, multi-pages, binders of information. It's going to summarize the findings that are in these 4 documents below. And the 4 documents below are asset management plans that are specific to 4 of our major asset systems that the district maintains, operates, and plans for capital improvements. So the 4 systems are the water reclamation and biosolids handling facilities, our conveyance and storage system, green infrastructure assets, and then our water course and flood management. And those 4 plans then are going to be taken over after the facilities plan is complete, and staff will continue to update those. So it allows us to really maintain the format of the plan and take information as we get better information, more data, and build it into that plan so they're living documents moving forward. And we think this really helps us to take the recommendations and the approach that's developed under 2050 and build it into our district processes so we continue to use this moving forward. So here's a layout of the schedule when the chapters will be presented to the commission here. So all the chapters 1 through 9, we're still figuring out 8 and 9, the dates on when those will be presented. The intent is that the full commission that the full plan will be presented for approval by the commission in July of next year. And I know we've presented to the commission before that this facilities plan is a little different. It's based on an asset management-based approach. So just kind of why does that asset management-based approach work for facilities planning? The past facilities plans we've done have been more single goal focused. So back when we had the water pollution abatement program, that was a court order to reduce overflows. So that was pretty much, it pointed us, do everything you need to do to reduce overflows. The next facilities plan was focused on peak flows and reducing those into the system. So that kind of gave us more of a focus there. That was a 2010 facilities plan. Then the 2020 facilities plan looked at where do we invest our next dollar to improve water quality. So it was really water quality focused. So we kind of taken all that information from there. We're still building on that, but now we've kind of laid out with the 2035 vision, there's a lot of different areas that we want to move forward in all those areas. So it's not just a laser focus on overflows or basement backups or energy. It's all of those areas that we want to move forward with. So this asset management-based approach, what it does is it builds a framework that when we're evaluating recommendations, we're looking at all of those different categories of level of service to figure out how does that recommendation not only address overflows, how does it address energy, does it have a safety component? So every recommendation is evaluated in those multiple goal areas because we want to come up with projects that don't just meet one single goal, that they have the best approach to meet multiple goals. And another step in this asset management-based approach is one of the first things we do is once we establish the goals is evaluate where are our asset systems at risk to not achieving those goals. So it's a comprehensive step where we walk through and determine, do we have issues with potential deterioration of assets from a condition basis that would be a risk? Is it that we have capacity concerns that could be a risk? Do we have issues with performance against goals? And so all those are evaluated to focus on the areas of highest risk. Then they're evaluated for the alternatives to mitigate those highest risks. And this also feeds in, as I'd said, that it develops an ongoing process that we're implementing now in the way we prioritize projects on a year-by-year basis, how we build this into all the information the district evaluates fits into this framework. So it's going to kind of take what's developed under 2050 and just move forward. And so what we want to focus on here today is a little bit of an overview of where we're at on recommendations that we're evaluating and analysis that's being done for some of these major 2035 vision goals. So under the integrated watershed management approach, we're going to be talking about how do we get to the goal of zero overflows and zero basement backups. What are we doing to evaluate how we can get to zero structures in the 100-year floodplain? And then on the energy and climate change side, we're going to be talking about what are we doing to evaluate the most effective sustainable biosolids management plans, what are we evaluating, and then how do we get to 100% renewable energy with 80% of that being internally produced. And here's where I'll hand it over to Bill to get into the specifics of those.
Now, as Greg said, he did a great job setting the stage for all the things we're looking at. I'm going to go through the different systems and relate what our overall goals are in terms of what we're looking at these different systems. When we look at zero overflows, we think about first our gray infrastructure, which is our wastewater treatment plants, our tunnel, our inline pump station from the tunnel, and we're looking at various long-range plans to get to zero overflows. We're looking at more tunnel storage. We're looking at blending at our two treatment plants. That's sort of under the current regulations, that's free treatment, so we should really be utilizing that. We've done work in the past on high-rate treatment, adding that to both of our treatment plants. We're looking at accommodations of all those things. And one other thing we're looking at more for 2050 is should we make South Shore our dry weather treatment plant and only have a plant at Jones Island that treats peak wet weather flows. That's something that would help us with energy and cost and other things, so that's a long-term consideration. The other key is as you all are aware, we have wet weather issues, and we need to be concerned about our customer municipalities and how much I&I are they giving us. We're evaluating that, and we're not done with that, but we really need to figure out, is the I&I stable? Is it getting worse? Because if it is getting worse, that impacts all the items we talked about above. In terms of our other overall goals, we're developing how we're going to integrate our gray and green systems. When we look at our interceptor system, we're going to look at sewers that have more likelihood of overflows. That's what I mean by lower level of protection. We're literally going to evaluate our system and say, this particular location has a high likelihood of overflows. We're also going to look at I&I control, looking at the data we're producing in the private property I&I project. We're still developing that. That's not completely done. When we look at our green infrastructure program, we're really looking at it in three ways. We're looking at what green infrastructure can do for us in the combined area. What can it do for us in the separated area? Also in that area, we're looking at what it will do in terms of TMDL loads and things like that. And then we're looking at implementation of our regional plan. You know, what would happen if we achieve 30% or 50% or the entire plan? And then a couple of key considerations in this area is we're going to develop interim milestones to try to get to only 2 CSOs a year. Right now we average around 3, and then the same thing maybe to get to 1 CSO a year. So we have some interim goals or interim milestones to look at. The other thing we're balancing is we've got a 2035 vision, which is higher than our regulatory goals. So we need to look at this both in terms of what we have to do and what we want to do. Zero basement backups is part of our long-term vision, and we're developing some good decision data on that. One of the things we've done through the private property I&I program is we've developed basically a way to project basement backup costs in the community. And in doing that, we project, very large costs for basement backups over the next 50 years. Somewhere using one set of assumptions, it's $300 million. Using another one, it's $500 million. And again, we're doing that because we want to assess what basement backups does to our community. We're looking at PPII and what success it's had on reducing basement backups. And then one real important point that all of our municipal customers ask about when we meet them literally every month, are we developing a system where we aren't going to cause basement backups on their local systems? That really involves getting critical elevations from each community and including that in our planning, and we are doing that. Lastly, we have a possibility of a very large project with the city of Milwaukee to look at impacts of private property I&I and green infrastructure for a large area up to 500 homes. We're not sure that's going to work, but that would be a great thing if we could do it, because then we could really do a large-scale evaluation of both the PPII and the GI programs. As Greg mentioned, we have a goal of getting structures out of the floodplain. One of the things we're doing is we typically model the 100-year floodplain. In this project, we're looking at the 25-year, the 50, and the 100. Reason being is, as we look at our different projects, if we look at them only in terms of a 100-year floodplain, we'll say they're all the same. But if we look at them and say, wow, this one, we've got 50 structures in the 25-year floodplain, that's a much higher priority than this project. We're also looking at what impact our different planned watercourse projects have on safety, and also looking at habitat and fish passage. That's an important consideration because, as I'm sure you're aware, we're embarking on a water quality improvement plan, which is really going to look at what do we need to do to meet the long-term water quality needs of our region. In terms of sustainable biosolids management, we have already completed a very detailed analysis on what we need to do in drying and dewatering at Jones Island for the next 6 years. We've got it broken down into each piece of equipment, when that piece of equipment may have to be rehabbed, and we've done this with lots of help from Veolia and lots of help from our district staff. For the long term, though, we're looking at, should we put new dryers into Jones Island? The dryers we have it's a very good system, but it's based on 1920s technology. We want to look at, are there better technologies, and of course, what's that going to cost? Another thing we are looking at is maybe we should move all of our biosolids to South Shore. That, again, is a very long-term issue. It's something that maybe have some political issues, but it could be that the best long-term solution is just have our biosolids down at South Shore. We're looking at different technologies. We use drum dryers. There's another technology called a fluid bed dryer, which is more energy efficient, more space efficient, safer. So we're really looking at that technology also. And then lastly, we're looking at approaches to reduce phosphorus in Milorganite. Right now, the phosphorus we have in Milorganite is environmentally sound or safe based on the research we do. But again, we need to look at that long term because we've got regulators that are concerned that we have too much phosphorus. And that the last two bullets, again, we're looking at the different Milorganite regulatory issues, and you probably also are aware we're doing some work with pyrolysis. That we view as maybe not a way to handle all of our biosolids, but it might be a good additional system to consider going forward. And I believe this is lastly, our energy plan goals. We did an energy plan, as Greg showed you in the first slide. We've evaluated every single recommendation in the energy plan. Under the facility plan, we did a detailed evaluation of 3 of those recommendations, mostly because most of those recommendations in the energy plan were already being looked at. They were things that once that energy plan was complete, that was married to all of our existing activities, and we're really addressing a lot of those items. And when you see the system alternatives we're developing, we're kind of developing multiple alternatives. one will meet the 100% renewable and 80% self-generated. A second one may be a lower cost, but it isn't going to meet those goals. A third one might be the one that meets all of our needs, our triple bottom line the best, but maybe it won't be the same one as the lowest cost. Maybe it won't be the same one as the 100% renewable and 80% self-generated. Lastly, when we look at energy, it looks like to meet our long-term goals, we're going to have to consider adding solar energy at South Shore. That's a bit complex in terms of all the different things that would have to be considered, but it seems like that's something we want to look at long-term. And I think that's it. I know that's a lot of information, but it's as Greg said, it's a very comprehensive facility planning effort, and what I like the most, because I lived through the first three, is we're getting down to the issues really well. We're not up in the clouds. We're not just looking at one thing. We're looking at all these different issues. So, sorry.
Questions by the commission? I just want to say that I'm entirely impressed with this. Your drill down and your multifaceted attack on many different platforms is evident here. And to me, it's an example not only in planning, but again, MMSD's leadership in this industry. So I thank you and look to and appreciate the final outcome when we see it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me mention one thing. There's 3 or 4 states that are now requiring this for facility planning because EPA and other agencies look at what we're doing and say, boy, that's really the way to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Clear Quarterly Report by Mickey Pearsall. This is the report where at the beginning, it's our third one, our beginning of the year, we started providing this information to you as a report as opposed to sending you emails with the different reports in it. So Mickey will take it from here.
You. And yep, I was going to say the same thing. We do this clear report.
Sorry.
That's okay. To provide a snapshot on the diverse and various initiatives that we have going on at the district. And just as a reminder, CLEAR is the acronym that we created for our current strategic plan as the umbrella, and it's collaborative, lean and efficient, accountable, and resilient. So I will just briefly go through some of the highlights from the third quarter. The first slide is addressing the initiatives that we have for collaborative, and this is really addressing the district's outreach program and how we reach out into the communities and do collaboration. And as you can see on the right, the picture that you're seeing there is the district's new Fresh Coast 740 website, and it is toggling through just 2 of the images that you'll see if you go to that website and check out. We can be a resource to a variety of different entities as they pursue green infrastructure strategies. The entire thing is not supposed to be on a timer, just that picture. But it's really for residential, nonprofit, private, and municipal agencies. You can drill into that and find a variety of strategies to undertake. In addition, the district had its Green Summers program, and it was a record year for rain barrel installation, with over 300 being installed and over 1,000 residents being reached in Whitefish Bay and the 30th Street corridor. And then finally, what we want to highlight is the Estabrook Dam public hearing that occurred in September. And now it won't go. There we go. The next area is lean and efficient, and this is where we're highlighting some of the process improvements that we're undertaking. And the first one that we're showing here is the expanded Wi-Fi network. So this just helps everybody do their jobs more efficiently when we have this infrastructure in place. So the expansion occurred at the 13th Street office, in the garage, numerous Jones Island and South Shore buildings and areas. And then the district has the Center of Excellence for Green Infrastructure over at the Global Water Center. So we did an installation for that area as well. eBuilder is the district's new project management system for capital projects, and this is a significant change for the district. It is an enterprise resource planning system that is touching not only project management, where our current system only does, but it's also reaching into different processes throughout the organization and also externally with contractors to submit invoices and just do a better job of managing the entire process of managing a project. That project is on schedule, and as you can see here, the variety of efforts that are being undertaken right now, we are on schedule and ready to go for the end date of that project. NeoGov is an online application for our Human Resources Department, and currently we have a manual process for accepting applications, and this is just moving us into an online arena so that we can have all of that electronically. Please. Okay. The other thing that we want to highlight under lean and efficient is what is happening with Milorganite. So this could also be under accountable because it's talking about a significant chunk of our revenue stream. But we present it here under lean and efficient because Milorganite revenue really is the lowest cost option for biosolids disposal, and we have an efficiency measure that we try to maintain as we process Milorganite. So that is a 2-to-1 revenue to expenditures ratio. And we have been exceeding this ratio for the past 2.5, well, actually, we've always been exceeding this ratio, but in the past 2.5 years, we are well above the 2-to-1 ratio. Our revenue targets have been around $9 million. We expect to see that again in 2017, and we're budgeting that for 2018. And our expenditure level has remained fairly flat as the revenue is increasing. As we've discussed in the past, this is primarily because we're seeing a shift into the retail market, and that does provide a higher margin, and we're able to see that higher ratio. One thing I want to point out on this slide is that it looks like in 2017, the third quarter is doing far better than recent years. This is really a timing issue. It relates to the D&D shutdown timing. We do expect that annually we will still be at that $9 million level. And on the production side, we are in line to produce just under 47,000 tons, and that will bring us back to inventory levels that we saw at the end of 2016. This slide is addressing many of our procurement goals, and it's under accountable. Our goal for SWIMBY awards is 20%, and in the third quarter, we were just under that goal. We will bring you year-end results and hope to have that closer to the 20% level in the next report that we do. 100% of construction bids were awarded with local worker requirements, 60% with apprenticeship goals, 70% of local awards were in the SSA, the sanitary, help me.
Sewer service.
Thank you. And
Sanitary sewer service area.
And 67% of local awards in the M7 area. In this presentation, we are including our investment portfolio overview, and this is a semi-annual report that the Commission previously received in hard copy. So what you're seeing right now is the June 30th rather than third quarter results, and at the end of the year, we will talk more about performance of investments. This slide is showing that as of June 30th, we were in compliance with our policy. At any given point during the year, we have various levels of funds invested. As of June 30th, it was around $230 million. So we will continue to report on our performance and compliance with policy as we give you future reports. And finally, under resilient, this is where we talk about the district's workforce and changes that we're seeing in workforce. So in the third quarter, we did have 7 new employees, and they're shown up here. 3 in our water quality area, 1 in IT, 1 in legal services, and 2 in technical services. And one of these was an internal promotion, and as a result of hiring new people, 4 employees also departed. But the changes that we're seeing affect the entire organization. They're throughout the divisions. A few statistics that I want to highlight on this, so we can talk about why resiliency in our workforce is important, is that in 2017 so far, almost 10% of our staff was hired. So of 221 positions, to date, we've had 19 new hires. That's a significant change. In the last 5 years, 32% have been hired. So about a third of our organization is new. And as we stand right now, 17% are eligible to retire. So in being resilient, we want to make sure that we maintain the institutional knowledge for a lot of the critical positions that we have. And so far, we have done a very good job of transitioning that knowledge as we bring in a lot of new faces and also tap the new skill sets that they bring. So with that, that's the snapshot for the third quarter, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Question by the commission? Very well done. Thank you.
The last item under the Executive Director's report is a change in the definition of small business that Jeff Spence is going to present.
We're going to tag team this.
Okay, that's fine.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Spence, Director of Community Outreach and Business Engagement.
Good morning, Charlotte Tisdale, Manager of Procurement and Business Development.
So as you're all aware of, the district has had a goal of 20% small women, minority-owned business participation for the last over 25 years. It's been a while since we've gone back to SBA to look at their definition of what a small business is. There have been some changes that require us to look at our definition and make some changes relative to our administrative policies. So we'll walk you through this.
Okay. So the current definition that we had, according to policy, was based totally on dollars. And the new regulations have a not to exceed standard by industry. And per the SBA, the standard represents the largest size that a business can be, and the definition of small varies by industry. Each industry has a NAICS code, and the average annual receipts over the past 3 years is the most common, or the average number of employees in the past 12 months.
So this NAICS code, or North American Industry Classification System, is a standard code that is used across a number of organizations and industries, including the public sector. So this isn't anything new, something that we look at along with a number of other classifications that group companies and industries.
So these are some of the industries that we would most be affected by, and these are the new size standards. These are the typical list of what we procure the most.
So as you can see, a lot of the standard businesses that we deal with relative to our construction fall under a size standard that is set by a dollar amount. There are industries that we would deal with, but not on a large scale, that look at size by number of employees. But that's rare and few between.
So the main reason we're doing this is because the federal grants and clean water funds utilize SBA as well as other industries. So we'll be in line with the city and the county as well.
Go ahead, continue. We'll get to his question just shortly.
So we would continue to oversee our own process, and applicants would be required to submit the business tax return for 3 years. And anybody whose standards is defined by the average number of employees would be asked to provide payroll verification for the past 12 months. MMSD will make sure that we do outreach for this. We will notify by email our registered vendors. We will also post updates on our website. We'll announce it at all our pre-bid and proposal meetings, and we will have direct outreach to current vendors who may be eligible. Questions?
Commissioner Bowe?
Thank you. The classification that this NAICS provides for prospective small businesses, is that based right there, the standard size, is that based on revenues that each one of those businesses derive
In this
on an annual basis?
Right, on this particular case, but it's not always the case. You have to look up the individual NAICS code and see what the standard is that they're going to define.
But that is based on company revenues?
Based on revenue.
Revenue, yes.
Gross revenue, yes.
Further questions?
So the reason we brought this before you is before we go out and change our administrative policy, we felt a need to bring this to you because it might look a bit different moving forward. If you would ask us what are the impacts of this change, I would not be able to give you a clear idea of how this is going to drive that 20% goal. So I would ask that as we move forward and we report out, that you ask us a few more questions if necessary.
Commissioner Bowe?
Being that this particular chart, you list 6 different areas that provide what I assume what you've indicated is a substantial portion of contracts that are letted out by the commission. Could you provide a comparison of what the current standard is? And even if you can't do it today, get it back to the commission as to what the current standard is versus what the new guideline that you're going to be utilizing is. So if the new guideline is going to be 36 million for water, sewer line, and related structures, is it currently 20? Is it currently 50? Is it currently 40? Are we looking at 20 million for every one of these classifications?
Our biggest challenge, since this is, since the companies would be classified based on their annual revenues, is we don't necessarily have those revenue numbers. So I couldn't come back and tell you what companies today would be.
No, but what are the current guidelines vis-a-vis this?
It's pretty straightforward. So it's 2.5 million now, and that would be the new guideline.
Oh, that was the question I was looking for.
Yeah.
So it's basically 2.5 million.
It is
So the
basically
bar is going to be
2.5
raised across the board and fairly significantly
For those
more so with
industries.
at
Yes.
least one of those categories. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Martinsek?
How many NACS codes are there? Or 60-some, or 80-some, or 200-some?
A large amount.
Okay, so, and you are going to change all of them, or just these?
We would go to a system where you'd look at all small businesses through these NAICS codes.
So, anybody who's in the water and sewer line and related structure construction, up until now, if they grossed more than $2.5 million, they were not considered an SBE. Under this plan, if they would be an SBE as long as they were under 36.5 million annually gross.
For that classification, yes.
That's significant.
It is significant, but it also makes a lot of sense because, for how many projects you could do 2 projects if you were or 1 project and,
Fall out of the category.
if you were that large. And that's also gross, that's not net, so, that would be like a contract award, correct? Okay. So I think what you were asking for, and it's what my question was going to be, what's the difference? It would be helpful if we saw the list of NAICS codes and those dollar amounts throughout, if that's not too difficult to do. And then basically what you'd see was what is now eligible over 2.5 million, which was our previous standard. Am I stating that correctly?
That's correct.
So we will provide you that information via email.
Mr. Perez?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed this. I wasn't clear on the why.
So the why is that because we get dollars from the feds, either through grants or Clean Water Fund loans. There's a need to be consistent with what the federal government defines as a small business. That is the why we need to change this.
So we've been asked to be compliant to a certain extent from somebody, from the federal government?
We have always been asked to be compliant with definitions that the federal government uses relative to work where we might get assistance from the federal government. 2014 is when this change took place. They've been morphing this for some time now, and we recognize that we hadn't brought this before you. And so we need to make the change, and so we're here to have the discussion.
Is that, do we need, I'm just putting on my other hat when we always do this, does legal have to sign off on being compliant, or is this something we have to do, don't have to do?
We have not yet been asked to review this in terms of the necessity to comply with these definitions, but we will be doing that, and we will ensure that this is something that we're required to do to be compliant.
Thank you.
Commissioner Manzanet?
The question is, thank you for informing us, but what is expected of us? It's just informing us at this point?
Yeah,
Is
this
there
is
going to
just-
be a motion that we're going to look at?
It's an admin policy, so it's something that would be done by staff, but we wanted to make sure that the commission knew about it while we were doing that. So there's no, unless I'm
There's
wrong,
no action.
there's no future action.
No, there's no future action.
Commissioner Martinsek?
I would hope that with this change of levels, that we might be able to attract more firms from within our SSSA, because there are firms now working in the arena and on NML that are doing, 10 million, 12 million, 15 million a year in some of these related construction industries. And I would like to see us be able to support those kind of firms going into the future. So I'm hopeful that by changing these standards, we may be able to attract a larger number of companies that are SBE, that are within our sewer region. And we're not just seeing these Butler, Pewaukee firms that are, our SBs. Not that those aren't good firms. I'm happy that they're here, but I think this may make a difference in hiring companies that employ people that live within our region that need the work. So I'm open to it.
Further discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes my report. We do have one closed session item.
Accepting motion to go into closed session?
Second.
Let's do this.
Sorry. I make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 and for the purposes as set forth on the published notice and agenda.
The motion's been made.
I'll second.
Thank you. The motion by Commissioner Martinsek. The second by Commissioner Manzanet. All in favor of going into closed session after a 5-minute recess, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-minute recess, then closed session.
An MCM production.